Some experiments were so disturbing, they were buried inside secret bases, hidden from the world for decades. In this video, we'll count down 10 real experiments, from the least to the most terrifying ever conducted behind closed doors. Number 10. In the early years of the nuclear age, the US government launched Project Sunshine, a secret initiative to study the effects of radioactive fallout on the human body. But instead of asking for volunteers, they quietly began collecting tissue samples from deceased people around the world without consent. The most disturbing part? Many of those samples came from babies and children. Bones, especially from young individuals, were seen as the best way to measure strontium-90 absorption, a radioactive element from nuclear tests. Grieving families were never told. In some cases, they buried empty coffins, believing their loved ones were whole. It wasn't until the 1990s, after documents were declassified, that the full extent of the operation was revealed. Thousands of bodies had been used, no permission, no accountability. It was all done in the name of national security, and it happened in secret labs across the US, the UK, and Australia. Number 9. Between 1954 and 1973, over 2,300 U.S. Army soldiers, most of them Seventh-day Adventists who objected to combat, were recruited for a little-known experiment called Operation Whitecoat. What they didn't realize was that they would become human test subjects for biological warfare research. Conducted at Fort Detrick, a high-security military base in Maryland, the operation involved exposing volunteers to dangerous pathogens like Q fever, tularemia, yellow fever, and more. Soldiers were kept in sealed chambers, while scientists in hazmat suits sprayed them with airborne microbes to observe infection patterns. Some volunteers became seriously ill. Others never fully recovered. Although participants technically gave consent, they weren't fully informed about the risks or long-term effects of what was being done to them. The military claimed the project helped develop vaccines and protective gear, but the price was paid in human suffering, hidden behind layers of national secrecy. Number 8. Plum Island, located just off the coast of New York, is home to one of the most secretive research facilities in the United States, the Plum Island Animal Disease Center. For decades, this government-run lab studied the world's most dangerous livestock viruses, including foot and mouth disease and African swine fever, under extreme biosecurity conditions. But rumors and declassified reports suggest the research may have gone far beyond animals. Former employees and investigative journalists have raised questions about experiments involving genetically modified organisms, possible bioweapons development, and accidental leaks. In one documented incident, a containment breach led to suspicions that a tick-borne illness had reached the mainland, fueling the long-standing theory that Lyme disease may have originated from the island. Access to the base is strictly controlled. Staff wear hazmat suits, and the facility is surrounded by water, fences, and armed security. The government denies any wrongdoing. But the mystery surrounding Plum Island has only grown, especially after it was announced that the lab would be relocated inland to a new facility in Kansas. What were they trying to leave behind? Number 7. Deep in the Utah desert lies Dugway Proving Ground, a U.S. Army base the size of Rhode Island, dedicated to testing some of the deadliest weapons ever created, including nerve agents, biological toxins, and chemical munitions. For decades, Dugway operated in near-total secrecy. But in 1968, a horrifying accident forced it into the spotlight. Nearly 6,000 sheep were found dead in Skull Valley, just outside the base. Autopsies revealed they had been poisoned by VX nerve agent, a chemical so toxic that just a few milligrams can kill a person in minutes. The military initially denied responsibility, but internal reports later confirmed that VX had been sprayed during a test flight, and winds likely carried it beyond the base's borders. That was just one incident. Whistleblowers have since come forward, describing other unreported leaks and accidents, with some claiming that even military personnel were exposed without proper protection. Despite the risks, Dugway continues to operate today. it remains one of the most restricted and heavily monitored sites in the country. Its work still classified, its dangers still very real. Number 6. From the 1950s through the 1970s, the Edgewood Arsenal in Maryland became the center of one of the most disturbing military testing programs in U.S. history. Over 7,000 soldiers were used as test subjects in experiments involving nerve agents, hallucinogens, and incapacitating chemicals, many of which were unapproved and dangerously experimental. Volunteers were told they were helping develop defenses against chemical attacks. In reality, they were being sprayed, injected, or exposed to substances like LSD, BZ, a powerful deliriant, and even sarin gas, often while being monitored behind two-way mirrors by scientists in hazmat suits. Many of the participants suffered from severe psychological effects, including paranoia, hallucinations, and memory loss. Some experienced long-term neurological damage, and several later died by suicide. Documents declassified in the 1990s revealed the true scale of the program and how little the soldiers had really known about what was being done to them. Edgewood was never shut down. It still operates today, but the full extent of what happened behind its locked doors remains one of the darkest chapters in American military science. Consider what we've seen so far: bodies taken without consent, secret tests on U.S. soldiers, and bases leaking deadly chemicals into the environment. But the next cases go even deeper, into full-scale mind control, radiation exposure, and biological disasters the world was never meant to see. Number 5. For years, the CIA operated a covert program known as MK-Ultra, aimed at developing techniques for mind control and psychological manipulation. At the center of this program was Fort Detrick, a military base in Maryland where many of the most extreme experiments were carried out. Scientists used LSD, sensory deprivation, hypnosis, and electroshock therapy on unwitting subjects, including prisoners, psychiatric patients, and even CIA employees. Some were dosed with hallucinogens for days without rest or food. Others were isolated in soundproof rooms while monitored through one-way glass. Many of the experiments were performed without consent. Some subjects never fully recovered, and others died under mysterious circumstances. One project, known as Operation Midnight Climax, even involved dosing civilians in hidden rooms, while agents observed from behind mirrors, testing whether drugs could control behavior without the subject's knowledge. When MK-Ultra was exposed in the 1970s, the CIA destroyed most of the records. Only fragments remain today. But they were enough to confirm that mind control wasn't just science fiction. It was a real government experiment, buried deep inside America's most secretive military labs. Number 4. In 1954, after conducting a series of hydrogen bomb tests in the Bikini Atoll, the U.S. government quietly began a classified study known as Project 4.1. Its purpose: to observe the effects of radiation exposure on human beings, specifically the Marshallese Islanders who had been exposed to nuclear fallout. The government claimed the exposure was accidental, but documents later revealed that scientists were already preparing research protocols before the detonation even took place. Dozens of islanders, including children, began showing symptoms of radiation poisoning: burns, hair loss, vomiting, and long-term illnesses like cancer. Instead of receiving immediate treatment, they were monitored like test subjects. Blood samples were taken regularly, internal organs were examined. They weren't told the full truth about what had happened. The people of the Marshall Islands were left with poisoned land, ongoing health problems, and generations of trauma, while U.S. officials kept the study classified for years. Project 4.1 wasn't just a medical survey. It was a real-life experiment in human radiation exposure, conducted under the disguise of scientific concern, on a population that never volunteered. Number 3. In 1979, a deadly cloud swept through the city of Sverdlovsk in the Soviet Union, what seemed at first like a natural outbreak of anthrax. But the truth was far more terrifying. The source of the outbreak was a top-secret Soviet military facility known as Compound 19, part of the biopreparat program. Behind its walls, scientists were developing biological weapons, including weaponized strains of anthrax, plague, and smallpox. On the morning of April 2nd, a clogged air filter was mistakenly removed, and for just a few hours, live anthrax spores were vented into the air. The result? Over 100 people were infected, and at least 66 died in agony, though some estimates place the death toll much higher. The Soviet government immediately covered it up. Victims were buried quickly, and the official story blamed contaminated meat. It wasn't until after the USSR collapsed that Russian scientists confirmed the real cause, an accidental release from a secret bioweapons lab. Sverdlovsk remains one of the deadliest laboratory accidents in history, proving how catastrophic a single failure inside a secret base can be. Number 2. In the far reaches of Long Island, New York, lies an abandoned military installation known as Camp Hero. Officially decommissioned in the 1980s, this former radar base became the center of one of the most disturbing and persistent testimonies in the history of secret experiments, the Montauk Project. According to multiple former workers and whistleblowers, Camp Hero wasn't just a radar station. It was the site of covert psychological and electromagnetic experiments, some allegedly targeting children. Testimonies describe programs involving mind control, sensory deprivation, and even attempts to manipulate time and perception. One man, Preston Nichols, claimed to have recovered suppressed memories of being both a researcher and a subject, describing underground labs, children in cages, and military personnel in hazmat suits monitoring bizarre machinery. No official documents have confirmed the full extent of these claims, but the U.S. government has acknowledged classified research at Camp Hero. The site is now sealed and overgrown, with multiple structures still off-limits to the public. Whether partially true or heavily suppressed, the Montauk Project inspired a generation of speculation, and was even the basis for the Netflix series Stranger Things. Number 1. During World War II, the Japanese Imperial Army operated a secret facility in occupied Manchuria called Unit 731. Hidden behind barbed wire and armed guards, this base became the site of some of the most horrific human experiments ever conducted. Led by General Shiro Ishii, the unit used thousands of Chinese civilians, Russian prisoners, and even women and children as live test subjects. Victims were deliberately infected with plague, anthrax, cholera, and subjected to vivisections without anesthesia, all while scientists recorded their slow deaths. Others were frozen alive, starved, burned, or exposed to chemical weapons to study the limits of human endurance. Pregnant women were experimented on. Children were dissected. There was no mercy and no escape. All of it was carried out in secret, under the guise of military research. After the war, many of the scientists behind Unit 731 were granted immunity by the U.S. in exchange for their data. No one was ever held accountable. To this day, Unit 731 remains a symbol of science at its most monstrous, and a terrifying reminder of what governments can hide behind the walls of a secret base.